Hello and welcome to the next installment of Cylinder Radio. I'm your host, Mr. Roosh, William Roosh, and this is the podcast where we attack different issues for the purpose of education. And today my guest is Eric Smith, a fellow educator, former colleague and friend. And our topic today, we're going big. Our topic today is the N-word. And I'm not saying it, at least not yet. But, so I'm going to say the N-word, and that's our topic. So Eric, sincerely, thank you. Thank you for doing this. You know, you and I have talked about like what this podcast is kind of meant to be. Yep. And it means a lot that you're on board with this like idea and this mission. And it means a lot. So I appreciate you being here.
What are you trying to get out of it?
I'm trying to expose all sides and perspectives on things that generally don't have the light cast on it, you know, and the topics, today's topic is something that I think people are scared to discuss. I think it's, and I can relate to that. So I do want to go into it, and I appreciate you being here and kind of your willingness to do it, because the last interview that I did, it was a similar situation where I am cautious. You know, I'm an educator and I'm trying to do the right thing in my life in general, but especially with this podcast. And I think you need like a dance partner, and I appreciate it.
And I'm kind of I used to be pretty conservative and like, okay, let me kind of tread softly or whatever. But I guess the older I get, the more water I want to splash. I mean, I just, and I kind of started that way, then kind of retreated for the professional side, and then I'm ready to make some waves again now. So yeah. Yeah,
because you have to be careful in, like, you know, the real world, corporate world, whatever. And we'll get into that. So the topic, this was, you and I were throwing around some different ideas for topics, and we're going to hopefully do those in the future. And then you brought this one up, and I was like, that's the most bold topic that I heard. Mm-hmm. So I was like, and you were basically like, come on, like we're going to do this. Let's do this. Yeah. So let's do this. Okay. So the N-word, what is, like, I guess just for the audience, like, what is your background? Why is this a topic that it makes sense for you and I to discuss?
Well, I think it's still very relevant, not only in academia, but in pop culture, and in the communities at large. And I've seen it kind of ebb and flow over the last 25 years, where it was used sparingly or very in different places. It was a word used in back alleys, in basements, and then I don't know, I'm sure we're going to get into the difference between public use of the word and private use of the word. But even then,
well, when you say like it's used back alleys, basements, is that like among the population in general?
Yeah, in general. No. Well, see, I didn't know any white folks who were trying to use the word up until that ebb, maybe in the mid 2000s, early 2000s. But I even be around enough white Americans or Caucasian Americans that even felt comfortable enough with me to think they could even use the word. Right. But the social landscape had changed as well. I mean, you had it in popular music now. Instead of 4 or 5 radio stations, you probably had 2. Yeah. And if it was going to be played, I mean, everybody kind of listened to it. And for whatever the reason, these are the people who are now buying the music.
Right.
And so it was kind of interesting to see the word kind of evolve from when I didn't hear a lot of black people saying it to I'm in a bar in Champaign-Urbana and these white boys are calling each other.
Right. Well, I know, but for the audience, like, what's your background a little bit? Where were you raised? Because when you say that you weren't around white people using it and stuff like that, I'm actually surprised given where you grew up.
Well, see, I didn't grow up around white people.
In Gary. So you grew up where?
Now you go right outside of Gary. I mean, when I got my license.
So you're from Gary, Indiana.
Gary, Indiana. Born and raised. Pretty much when it was the white flight, people were leaving. Most of the white people who were in Gary were just moving out. So
Michael Jackson's from there, right?
Born and raised, him and Janet. But the thing was, that was the first person I heard it from was a white person, and it was the last white family who lived on our block.
How did they say it?
Oh, pretty much, nigger, get out of here, or something like that. But we were both like 6 and 7 years old.
Right.
Playing like outside.
Said it to you?
Yeah, said it to me, and I went to my brothers. I'm like, "What is this? What was this?"
Right.
And then it was a big, kind of to do, but it was more. That's when I knew that this word had some power to it. Like what? I didn't hear anyone use it.
So when he said it the first time, it didn't have power because you didn't know what it was.
I didn't know what it was.
But could you tell by the way he said it that it was
I knew it
meant to have a sting, and then you just didn't have a sting because you didn't know what it was. All right. Yeah, which is so interesting. I mean, right away. That's the interesting thing about words. It just sounds coming out of your mouth, but there's intention behind them, and if the intention isn't picked up on or isn't felt, then it's nothing physical about it.
He could have called me like a wagon wheel or something.
Right. Yeah.
It's his tone, his demeanor, his nonverbal communication. They're like, I'm a what?
Right.
A wagon wheel.
He didn't get the reaction he wanted out of you.
No, he didn't. He got it out of my brother.
Older brother?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So after that, I probably didn't hear it again, probably till maybe in middle school or junior high school. But again, it wasn't, I don't remember it. I don't remember it in conversations. Maybe in high school, it was starting to be used. And then in high school, I was a different person too. So I definitely didn't use it.
Used in the black community or?
No, definitely not.
No, just white people saying it.
Well, no, these are because I still didn't know white people until I left and went off to college, or was in Crown Point or Maryville, Indiana.
Yeah.
Oh, we heard it then too.
Right. When you say you heard it in high school, this is just black people saying it amongst each other.
Because my high school was 99.5%.
And it was a term of endearment?
Yeah, a more term of endearment. No, it depends.
It could be anything.
Yeah, it could run the gamut depending on, again, the tonality, the conversation, like many other slang terms, depending on how you say it. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Is it going to give it power and meaning? Did you,
when you first started hearing that more and more, was there an adjustment process, or did you just accept it right away that this is the way things are? When it
started to spill into the everyday lexicon, I think my biggest, I'm going to fast forward it to a Lil Wayne concert. And surprisingly, I don't know why I thought it was going to be more African Americans at this Lil Wayne concert.
In Indiana? Chicago?
Right outside of Chicago.
Okay.
But 80% of the audience were white kids. But Lil Wayne kind of tours on he has a little rock, a little all of that, a little alternative on his bill.
Yeah.
So he pulls out these all these bands. But the thing was, when the songs came out, all these kids were singing his lyrics. I mean, the N-word right back at him. So this was the first time I was like, whoa, like this is like crazy, because I had never been to a concert where these words were being blared back at the artist by anyone, let alone people who were not African American. Did you see? It was maybe a year ago. I forget who it was now. It's so bad. But someone who's like the biggest hip hop star out right now. He's like the biggest. I forget now. Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar. Thank you. Yeah, Kendrick Lamar brought like a white girl on stage, and then was like, kind of like, let's go. And she was rapping, and then she said it, and like they stopped the music, and everyone like booed her off stage. I was like, ooh, that seemed like a setup. Like so that kind of gets us into. I mean, look, the reason why this is. How do you feel about that? How did I feel? Yeah, it felt like a setup. Like
this whole conversation, it's happening because you and I know each other. I wish it could happen among me with someone I didn't know, because it's an important conversation to have. But here's where I think it gets, where it comes down to is I'm not holier than thou. I've said a lot of horrible things in my life, but I've never said that word for whatever reason. Because I've said like racist stuff before, but I've never said that word in anything outside of quoting a Dave Chappelle thing or, singing Biggie. And I'm always super careful of it. I've never said it in like a hateful way. So I try very hard to like not hold prejudice, and not just for like racial reasons, but for a lot of reasons. I think it doesn't hold up, in a lot of ways. Like racism isn't, I try not to be racist, not just because it's not like nice, it's because it doesn't hold up, like just across the board. If you want to have like, I'm not going to hire this person because they are X, Y, and Z, and they're the best for the job, then you're going to lose. So for a lot of reasons, but I guess what it comes down to is I am just very careful because I'm trying to be a good person. The way I live my life, what I'm trying to do, the way I'm trying to educate, all this stuff is I'm trying to be a good person. And in that, I don't want to hurt people. But in education, you're going to have to take risks. And I think that's where it comes down to is I hear things like that and like, that's a risk. And then it went south. So I'm kind of just trying to learn as I go. Like when I saw that video of that girl, I was like, that seems unfair because I don't know. And it's like, you can get almost a pass, But
he also had an opportunity in that situation to teach.
Yeah.
And I think she probably learned something.
Yeah.
That this word is never appropriate for you to say. Now you can listen to it.
Yeah.
But just because of the power dynamic, and then you get into the whole racial structure of the word and how loaded it is and how race kind of impacts that. Not necessarily on the individual, but society at large. So he's saying like, we are not at a point where he feels comfortable that he'll let her use that word in a venue like this. Now,
knowing that you're pulling her up on stage to sing that song, the lyrics to your own song, was there any element of it? And I mean, we don't know what's going on in his head, but was there any element of it that's like, let's see how she handles this?
Well, I don't think he was thinking that far, and he probably thought, just on his reaction, that she would just know. She would probably know not to say this word.
Yeah.
Like I never thought that. I just came from a Jay-Z and Beyonce concert, which is, anyway, I was there. That's a whole other podcast. But again, with some really good seats, we're on the floor, and all the white people behind me are definitely giving Jay-Z all of his ends back, all of them. And I'm like, whoa, so it's like, okay, I think people, I wasn't expecting that. Right. So I don't think Kendrick Lamar was expecting this young lady to just be so emboldened to take ownership of that word. Now, what was her psychology in saying it? Because she's
might just be in the moment.
Yeah, she might be in the moment.
She might be like, oh, this is my chance to like be like accepted and be like, get my like, whatever hood pass. Yeah. Like when you say I was like, whoa, can you explain that to me a bit? Like when you were like, wait, like whatever that whoa is, can you like just describe that to me about like in more detail?
It was just the fact that people who were not African American were screaming this word at the top of their lungs, and it took me back to a time where in Indiana, in crossing the lines into those small towns, 25 miles out. I don't know if we haven't talked about it, but being part of a very Afrocentric culture with the NAACP, each of the churches where this word was just not said, let alone
in your past.
Yeah.
Like that's
let alone by someone who was not Black. No, it was just, if you were not Black saying this word, you were trying to hurt me.
Right.
So it's like someone who, hears loud sounds or got, abused as a child.
Yeah.
And then somebody's clapping like, oh, as soon as I start clapping, I'm about to slap the hell out of you.
Yeah.
So if they heard clapping even as an adult, it's like, whoa, So when I'm hearing this word, I'm like, whoa.
Is there a conflict in your head of like the whoa? Because I'm going back to this experience from, when I was younger and growing up and blah, 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 and where I'm from in Indiana. And then is there like a conflict of like, oh, but these people, at least many of them, let's just assume for argument's sake, aren't that. So let's just say, maybe they are, but let's just say for argument's sake, let's say that they're not. Is there a conflict in you of between those two of like, oh, that's just a firecracker. That's not, Viet Cong type of thing.
Well, I mean, I don't know them personally, nor are we in a situation where this is like, again, when we go back to the music, I go back and forth with that because I don't know. I didn't grow up. Maybe in the 90s, there was a lot of concerts where people were blaring, nigger back at people. Like I wasn't at those concerts.
Right.
So,
What about like Richard Pryor stand up? Did you listen to that at all? And like, were you like, whoa, like when you were young?
Oh,
that
definitely.
was like 70s,
Definitely.
80s. Yeah.
From the Red Fox and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, Sherman Helmsley, like those.
Yeah. But those were your uncles and your cousins. And it was those rare opportunities where it was acceptable because it was more used to express art or some type of entertainment. Like, oh, okay, I can get this.
That's the way you saw it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was you were looking at reality through the arts, and that's always, if you were going to use it, that would be the place too.
So would you say that the assumption is just naturally going to go to if the white person is saying it, like, so here's what it comes down to is like, let's say that I'm talking to a white friend of mine. It's just the two of us in my house, okay, having, a drink or something like that. And I'm quoting a Dave Chappelle thing, or it's me by myself in my room and I'm playing Biggie, love Biggie. And I'm playing it by myself. My kids are away, like windows are locked and blinded out. And I am just like rapping to that. Is that, I don't want to say like, is that okay? Because that's not the right word. Is that something that if you know that I'm doing that, would that make you uncomfortable?
No.
Would that make people that you might, know or be around the Black community, would that make them uncomfortable? That I shouldn't do that? If there's no audience to hear it or interpret it the wrong, because I think where we see this similarly.
This is where it gets a little weird.
Yeah.
Because as crazy as this may sound, I think some people in the Black community would respect you more because you are pretty consistent in your use of the word. Like I use it, guys. I mean, I might not use it in front of you. You are honest with that. Like I like the song. It goes with the lyric. It's a, it's a rhyme. It goes with the, it goes with the flow of the word. And it's almost too much to try to think about changing this art. Again, I think that's one of the few exceptions where you can kind of use it in context. We go back to literature and all these books where they've taken it out, or
like Huck Finn or something like that. Yeah.
Why would you do that? And we were reading, last year we were reading, Their Eyes Were Watching God, and Niggers in there several times. Some students read it.
And it was an all-white school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one was a 199.98% white, 100% Jewish school.
Right.
And
they read it aloud in your class?
Yeah, we were reading it out loud. And some of them had the permission. It's in context. If you're ever going to use it, you can use it in context.
You said that.
Yeah. Well, I taught it 2 years in a row. And it was interesting, with 1 year, the now seniors used it more freely than my 10th graders last year, which was really interesting. No one chose to say it last year for whatever the reason. I don't know if the climate had changed a little bit.
They just skip it.
No, they just call it the N-word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which like disrupts the flow of the literature, like, right?
You're kind of missing what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done Huck Finn in my class, and they've said it, and then I've read it aloud and said it. It's very uncomfortable for me. It's very uncomfortable. But again, because it's not uncomfortable for me at all to rap to Biggie by myself at all. But it's because I'm concerned about.
Does it flow off your tongue differently when you're?
It doesn't flow off my tongue at all when I'm around other people.
No, I'm talking about like.
Oh, when I'm by myself, I'm good.
Shower.
Oh yeah, I'm really good.
Like you're ready to go on stage.
Oh, I sound just like you. But my concern is because I don't want to hurt. I don't want to give someone who, let's say, they're a Vietnam vet, like that. I like that analogy. Like, it's not. I don't want to set off firecrackers. It's going to.
You don't want to have
them.
PTSD over this.
I don't want them. I don't want to make any people uncomfortable unnecessarily. Mm-hmm. I'm okay with making people uncomfortable necessarily if it needs to be. That's not my fight. My fight is to challenge people on things. Is not that in a Biggie lyric. It would be something different. Like I do want to talk about like Jonathan Friedland, who was the executive at Netflix.
Okay.
And there was a special where someone on like a comedy special said the R word, and then he said the actual word.
What's the R word?
Retard. Oh. And then he said, you can't say that.
You can't say retard?
You can't say retard for Netflix. He's an executive. Okay. So he is telling the other like people at Netflix, the corporation, we can't have content that says this word because it's like saying the N word about black people, but he didn't say the N word. He said the word.
Okay. And
if he's running as like a censor, like saying the N-word, there's a loophole in there like, oh, I guess I can't say napkin. Like, so as the censor, can he say it in that context? And that was a really interesting one for me because I was thinking like, maybe that's the time to say it and then let the chips fall as they may. And he got fired. So that's how the chips fell. But I don't think that rapping or saying a Chappelle lyric is like the time to like, oh, I'm going to just see if I can get away with it here. I think the time to see if you can get away with it is like, when your job is hinged on language. Does that mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you're getting into when is entertainment part of your leisure activity and when is entertainment part of your professional livelihood, making money when it comes to that. I mean, entertainment still has business on the end. Mm-hmm. So when does it kind of cross that line into yes, I'm doing this for the enjoyment or the the lyrical content of it. And why did his fire in that? I think I probably need to go over that thing again. Mm-hmm. But his example of using the N-word, me personally, and Black people might jump on me about this. I don't know if this is part of white guilt or whatever, but I don't know if they took it too far. Yeah. Because he was trying to explain something. Right. So I don't know why we get, overly sensitive or people are, I guess the N-word would be part of this storm when it comes to this political correctness. Right. This kind of snowball effect. Yeah. It kind of gets in there. It's like, okay, when is this political correctness and we want to use this as an excuse and or an example to show that we stand for this, going back to that.
It's like virtue signaling to a degree. Right. I mean, just in me just describing that story, you said, what's the R word? So I said it. Now, if you said, what's the N word? I would say it. And then what happens is that, is that a setup? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's where it gets is it the sound coming out of your mouth? Mm-hmm.
Now, danger, and this is, and I don't want to diminish the R word.
I understand. Yeah.
But I think this is becoming, again, some people might jump on me about this, but
jump all around, cylinderradio@gmail.com.
I was an adult.
Send it away. You can come on the show.
And retarded was part of the title of the place I worked at. It was Lake County Association of the Retarded in the 2000s.
It means to slow down. I would work on engines when I was younger, and it'd you retard the timing, you slow it down.
No, we were talking about people who are mentally challenged.
Okay, I know. I mean, I don't know. Was it a medical term?
No, but we were using it 2005, 2006.
It was on
It was on the building. I was running there every day. So I don't remember getting the memo. I mean, I stopped working there, not because they called people the R word, but I've never heard, the nigga house. I've never heard, but when did this list of words come to say that you can't say this word anymore? Who are the word Gestapo?
Yeah.
Who kind of dictates this whole?
Who is?
Yeah.
That's a great question. Is it just society? Is it a small faction of society? It's the PC culture. It's the outrage culture of like, who's next? Like what else? Like who else is gonna be hurt by this language? And then comparing it, because I've heard that like this is like saying the N-word. Like this is like saying the N-word, like all going back to that, because the N-word is just widely accepted by people, even like racist white people that use it as like the most powerful. Mm-hmm. What's the one video I was watching? It was like the atom bomb of racial slurs. Yeah. So if you compare it to that, it's the same way that people compare people to Hitler.
Yeah.
You know, they're like Hitler because Hitler is the worst. So you compare it like language to, that's like saying the N-word. Mm-hmm. Like, well, no, you know, but what you're trying to do is equate it to something really venomous. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it has some harmful connotation. I think that's where they all kind of line up equally. But I mean, does the R word have harmful connotation? Like it can, well, or the F word for homosexuals. Like, well, what about if you say, pardon, you fucking retard? That's not
nice.
That's not nice.
Right.
So I'm not trying to say that, you know, so fucking nigger. Like, it's like,
what if you call someone who's not? What if you call someone with 140 IQ that just, you know, didn't take the plastic off when they put it in the microwave? You call them that?
The fucking retard.
Yeah.
They probably were. No.
I mean, but like, so like, it's a different kind of avenue. Like, you know, using like the F word was something that we used in high school, and it wasn't used. We didn't say it to gay people. You didn't say it to gay people. Like that would be like if you would call someone like the F word, and then they were like, I'm a homosexual. You'd be like, oh my God, I'm sorry.
So what about just the word gay? We can't say that in school anymore either. Or you're acting gay, or stop being gay.
Oh, that way. Yeah. Right. It can only be to describe a homosexual.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, like we just call, like that was just like a way to tease someone, but it wasn't necessarily because they were even effeminate.
No, it was. So when did the word Gestapo? When did these words gain so much power? And like you quoted before, the N-word being the Agent Orange, you know, the atomic bomb of words. But when did we get to the point where, and should we be at a point where all of these words kind of follow behind it in their sensitivity in every day?
See, I think that's why I love, like, this isn't one of the early podcasts for this, but I think it's what we need to do is have these conversations. And we need to iron this out and figure it out so that at least we can be pointed. Because I think, especially speaking for every single white person on the planet, no, I'm not. But I think that what it is like people who might think along the lines of where I'm at, which is not wanting to upset people, not wanting to convey any kind of racism or anything like that, is I don't know where the lines are at. So, and I don't know if the lines are going to be different for every situation you're in, but let's just try and figure this whole thing out. I mean, even when it comes down to the sounds, I wrote it down in my notes, the word niggardly has nothing to do with the N-word. It means not generous or stingy, and it's 16th century and has no affiliation or something like that. But it sounds similar. So if a black guy is giving out candy on Halloween, and he's only giving you like one M&M, and you say like, you're being niggardly with those M&Ms.
But somebody did that and somebody took it the wrong way. That happened like recently.
Oh, really?
With that word, yeah, pretty much in that vein, where someone like overly sensitive took it out of context.
Maybe they didn't know the word,
and they didn't know the word.
That's part of it, probably.
Right, that was totally it.
Yeah,
that was totally it.
Because. And then, like, if an executive says that word, like, could they get fired because it sounds similar now? Like, I don't know. I think
in this climate we're in, yes. Yeah.
And then that gets really, really scary, because I am a free.
They're going to apologize.
Yeah.
for saying it and it was close to the word that they thought it was. I mean, that's how far we've come. Oh, I'm sorry, I used that word that was close to a word that you might have been offended by. Like, are you serious?
So, the attack on free speech, even like hate speech, because hate speech is something that's really important because people are pushing for hate speech laws. And I'm against hate speech laws. I think, and that even goes for like people who are like pro, free speech, but then that you can't, burn the flag or something like that, or you can't speak out against America. It's like, no. Free speech means free speech across the board. Mm-hmm. And if you can't use that even in hateful speech, and a whole other issue is who decides what's hateful. Is it this like secret Gestapo police?
Yeah.
Is it the government's going to decide that? Is it like, a mob mentality? But we need to be able to freely talk about ideas. That's what this podcast is all about. Let's talk about these ideas. And if they're bad ideas, let's shine a lot of light on it. We'll shine a light. This is Cylinder Radio. There's flashlights on all sides of this shape. Let's shine light on these bad ideas. I'll bring someone in who's hateful. I'll shine light on it because bad ideas will fail. Good ideas will be promoted by the masses. I believe that. I don't know.
So what if you decided from here on out, all your podcasts, that your surname for everyone was now nigga, like nigga Eric, or nigga Marcellus, or
well, why would I decide that though?
I mean, probably to be controversial and to to take the power of that word and see what type of effect do you think that would have on, not that you're trying to get listeners, but like if someone like, okay, what does this word mean? Does that say that does that scream, Roosh, you're a racist, you're an asshole?
Right.
Or does that mean that you
get me downloads?
Yeah, like
listen to this crazy white teacher. He's right.
He said nigga Eric. That's his name. He's like, that's like what? When again giving the word power, and what gives that word power? Is it the timing? Is it political climate? Is it this perfect storm of sensitivity and political correctness? When does it? Again, we know that word didn't always have that type of connotation.
Right.
But when I was 6-7 years old and the white, guy, young kid called me that word.
The first time you ever heard it.
The first time I ever heard it, that's when it's going to get power. So when are these words?
So just share that story real quick. So the first time, because we talked about that before we went on the air.
There was we were playing, and
you and this white kid?
Me and this white kid, big wheels or tricycles or whatever it was, and he didn't get something and ended up calling me like you nigger or something like that, and I'm what? You what? Like what is that? Like
you've never heard it before.
If we're going to be talking about each other or trying to demean each other, you need to catch me on vocabulary because I don't know how to come back. I mean, are you a cracker now? Right. Are you a red devil? Are you a pink tail? I don't know.
I don't even know those.
What? You don't know those?
No.
You're from Pennsylvania, man.
I know, but like I was raised in a house. Like, I never heard racial slurs.
You never heard of pink tail?
No.
Really?
No. I never heard my parents. My parents are in their 60s now. Like I've never heard them say
a pink tail is a white girl's for white girls.
Never heard it. And I was raised in a pretty white community. There was like a decent like Puerto Rican Hispanic community, but there was one black kid in my neighborhood, and he was my best friend in like elementary school. And I didn't even connect the dots that he was something like different. Like I honestly didn't. I was just like whatever. Like he's a black kid. I didn't know what that meant. Like it was really like it's such a child thing. I have 2 little boys, and like they're so innocent. Like they're not plagued by all this like societal nonsense.
This is definitely a learned behavior.
Yeah, it really is. Like it's such a social construct, which is fascinating because I clearly remember. And then like people would say racial slurs when I'm a little bit older about that kid, and I was like, what? Huh? Or someone would be like, yeah, he's gonna get arrested someday. I was like, why? Like I was so oblivious to all of those stereotypes and all of that stuff. But the first time that was said to you, it didn't register.
No.
But it did. You said with your older brother, who's how much older?
Like 8 years.
Okay. So it wasn't his first rodeo with the word. Yeah.
No. And he made it sure that, this is not going to be said again.
Right.
In that context. But then let's, fast forward to I'm at the University of Illinois and being at a bar and hearing these drunk white guys use this word as if in terms of endearment to each other. I was like, whoa. So I had some choices to make. I'm like, okay, again, the setting.
It was all white. It wasn't a mixed group.
It was a mixed group.
It was
the two white guys were talking to each other in the mixed group.
Right. But they had friends there that
were black.
So they must have had some. They must have had some.
They felt very
idea that they had a past.
And I don't know if you've heard the term wigger. Did they use that?
Oh yeah, that I know.
Yeah, they were more.
That I probably was at some point.
They were more offended by wigger than they were nigger.
The white guys were.
Yeah, they were.
That's funny.
Totally offended.
They were offended.
Oh yeah, when other white people would call them wiggers, they were totally offended.
No, funny. The double standard that we have of like taking offense.
Which was just the psychology behind that. Like, what is the psychosis of a white guy being offended by the wigger word?
Well, that's funny. I have no problem saying wigger. I said it openly. That was said by my friends all the time. Oh, that kid's a wigger, blah, 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 blah. And then we're like, what's that? They're like, a white, I don't know if they said, they're like a white person who's trying to be black. Mm-hmm. Like, it was so interesting. That was just so free. Yeah, I still to this day, I don't even know if that's like on the list with the R word. Like, I just thought I could say wigger. Check the list? Yeah, I wouldn't say it anymore. But like, yeah, I thought that was.
And again, and that was the first time I saw someone get offended who heard the word.
How did they hear the word?
I called them that.
Oh, you did.
I'm like I don't like white people calling me this. Like, don't call me that. I'm like, but you are. So
these are people that you didn't know?
Well,
they were in like a friend group.
Well, see, yeah. So I had to decide on, what path I was going to go down. Like, if I hear you say this word again, is it going to be on or just like smack him in the face with the whole bar fight?
Right. Did you have an inkling in yourself to do that?
Well, in that particular instance, I wanted to see where they were coming from and how did they get to the point where they felt comfortable enough to do this. Mm-hmm. And I was even probably more interested in the fact that they had, African-American friends who felt comfortable with them saying this. Right. So I wasn't in the place to huff and puff and blow everybody's house down.
Like you would just ruin the night then.
Yeah. We actually ended up becoming roommates, which was crazy.
What was his deal?
Oh, he was a wigger.
Yeah.
And he probably
he wanted to be a part of like the black community, black culture.
That whole thing. To the point where he would be offended. Like if we could call him right now, when I called him a wigger, he would be really upset.
Still. Yeah. Does he use the N-word still?
I don't know. I don't think so. I told him he'd probably grow out of it.
Yeah.
And that was 10 years ago. He was like 20 or 21 at the time. He's like 31 with kids now, so or 32 with kids. So I don't know if that's still part of it. But he's still like in Bumblefuck, Illinois.
Right.
Like, that whole type of.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if I had a bunch of people, like I'm deep in like the Filipino culture. So if there is like, if they say things that are like against Filipinos or blah, 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 or Filipino stereotype or something like that, like I'll even say them sometimes. Like my kids are Filipino. So like I kind of have like a past there where I'm like, the people I love most in my life are this. So I can kind of tease them about it because the love is so strong. If like my closest friends were black and they were like joking around about like black this or, CP time or something like that, like, would I do that? Probably not, because it's a heavier weight behind the word than like the jokes that I might say about like Filipinos. Mm-hmm. But if my friend said, "Hey, Will, you got it. Say it. Come on, say it." Like, okay, like because I'm not connected to that word. I'm not loyal to that word in any kind of way, other than I'm out of respect, I'm staying away from it. Does that make sense? So if someone said like, whatever, no harm for me, you come on. Like if I was like egged on to do it, then I probably would because of that, but I would still be risking, these 3 people in front of me who are doing that aren't everybody. And I also risk it, but my loyalty, so to speak, is to the people who are closest in my life. So people might get offended. People might get offended about like my, I might say an Asian joke or like a Filipino joke or something like that. They might get offended, and that would upset me, and it may give me a second thought about doing it again. But it's still like, those are my later concerns. My concerns are the people in my direct life,
So the N-word, I mean, we've gone through the history of it, the sting of it.
When you said people get comfortable enough to say it around you, you were talking about how you were in work situations with white people who felt like they could, not that they were like, not that you told them like, hey, just so you know, you get a whatever hood pass here, but they just felt like free to do it.
Well, and this is what, again, when other people adopt the N connotation, because she is, and if she didn't tell me she was Persian.
Who was this? This was
a coworker.
From our.
Yeah.
Okay,
if she didn't tell me she was Persian, I wouldn't have known she was Persian. Whatever. She looked like a white girl to me, but she told me she was Persian. So I'm like, okay. And she said that they call them sand niggas. So I'm like, oh.
She said this to you?
Yeah, we were like at a bar and just talking, and like, oh, and somewhere we got on race, and they were known as sand niggas. So she felt that she can say the word
because it has a word in front of it.
Yeah.
So if you just put a couple of letters in front of it, you change the N to a W, or you put sand there, then it's.
I mean, they called them that, and she was taking it back, and that whole ownership, that the same reason that African Americans were saying that they took the word, and that's fine. That I didn't have a problem with that. We were in a very, it was a casual kind of private setting, but I wouldn't, nor did I think that gave her permission, to call me out, to call me. I wasn't going to be calling her sand nigga or sand bitch or
right
any C word.
But she used it in talking to you,
in the sense that it was a group, and she wanted the people to know that she had ownership of that word because people call Persians that. And that was kind of the end of it. Until she decided to call me that again.
That's actually an interesting thing, because I've heard that sand and then I've also, like, that I grew up around. And then also another one, just gonna say it for the sake of it being clear, is I've heard people say like dune coon for like sand.
Okay.
So it's like,
that's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Okay.
I mean, in the sense that it's,
right.
The rhyme and the English part of it
rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
Of hate. But but I heard that over and over again, and it felt like a separate thing. It felt like almost like the word niggardly, which is a separate thing. It felt like, oh, like that's something you can say those words, sand, blah, blah, and then, but not this one. Again, maybe because of the history of like Black Americans and slavery and everything, and like we're at war in the Middle East and ISIS, so like you can say bad things about Middle Eastern people. Like, I don't know.
So why would they get offended if you called them a dune coon?
If someone was like Middle Eastern, yeah.
Would they know what that meant?
Did they know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they knew what that meant, and it was a racial slur. I think that it was just more freely said in the community that I grew up in, because it was just like you can just dump on certain ethnic groups and certain races, and other ones you just don't. Like, you can make fun of like Asians all day.
I'm not on Twitter, but if I was on Black Twitter, I would definitely do the dune coon. Like, who's ever heard this word today? But I'm not on it.
Yeah.
But I'll ask somebody and get back to you though. That's
like, yeah, but
not to perpetuate stereotypes, but that's
it's interesting that when you brought up with the way that she kind of talks to herself, does that give a pass to use just part of that then?
Yeah.
Because you've been called it. It's like, hey, we're like, hey, we both know the struggle. They do like we know the struggle.
Well, and this is where I can draw the line with her. Even then, even if she was African American, I would still feel very uncomfortable for her to call me that. If she didn't know me that way, don't call me that anyway. But out at a bar with coworkers, I'm like, wait a minute, like what? What are you doing?
What was the context, by the way? Like the first time she said it to you? Do you remember?
I think she was talking to somebody else, and I kind of like overheard it. And then once she knew I heard it,
what was the context? Like, he's my...
Okay. Now this is the evolution of this word.
Okay.
Because I heard it once at a bar, TGI Fridays to be exact, Fridays, and I know
work happy hour spot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were
totally jalapeno poppers.
Yeah, and the Long Island iced tea, like 3 or 4 in.
Right.
And
teachers get loose.
Oh yeah, and I think she called me. Eric's my nigger, and then people kind of looked at it like, oh, I can say that word.
ER or A?
A. And that's a whole nother
That's
thing.
a whole different thing. Yeah.
I think people just got lazy in their vernacular and not necessarily dropped the R, but that's Samantha. So she called me that. Mm-hmm. Now I should have told her, I feel uncomfortable, like, at least in private or something, like, don't do this again.
Right.
Even though I felt that way, I never thought that this is the end of this word because I'm not going to hear it again. She got away with it on this account. But then maybe a year later, again, and I said if she was African American, I would have been offended. Like, okay, I'm probably not gonna. But I probably would have mentioned to a black girl, like, watch your mouth. But if
black people have done that to you that you didn't know well, right? Like, you're my
no.
So the thing of who was that?
Well, not in the sense that we were at like a work event and somebody in mixed company in front of white folk. We just don't do that. Like, no.
Like, we say we don't do that. That's just like it's like the unwritten law of being black.
Well, when I say we don't do that, like we, the people who know better. Like, I'm sure there are some people who would do it and, feel comfortable doing that. I know some black guys who call everybody nigga, like white people, get out my way, nigga. That's
what was that the presidential correspondence center was Larry Whitmore.
Oh yeah,
Wilmore. He said it to Obama.
Yes.
Like, where they don't probably know each other well. Like, that was just to stir up controversy and like make a state like.
And Larry, who's writing on everything right now, and he's had a talk show briefly, wanted to be. I think he wanted to be controversial. I think he wanted to kind of take the word back, but he knows that Obama has been called that every day of that presidency, in some form or fashion, and in a different way.
Right.
So I think he just wanted to like wink at the world, like, I can call you that, but you can't, type of thing. And
I'm going to expose it. This is what's being said about you, and I'm going to expose it, say it, but in a different way.
Yeah. And again, that's that whole art thing kind of pushes that envelope.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, I know a lot of people that dislike Obama, but I don't know. I guess, I mean, and again, I'm not in those circles, but I don't know a whole lot of people that disliked him solely because he was black. I have no doubt that there are those people, but I just haven't heard that as much. So, when you say, this is just what's being said, is that like, what drives you to believe that that's being said?
Oh, that people are calling Obama?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, that's just like that, dislike him because he was black.
If Jesse Jackson got caught on the monitor, did you remember that one?
No.
When Jesse Jackson was on, I don't know if it was CNN or ABC News, and they all are mic'd up, and he's like, who does nigga think he is? He needs to pay his dues.
Talking about Obama.
Yeah. And people wanted to take it all out of like, how dare he call him that word? But again, it was not meant for public consumption, changing time.
But I heard like, maybe I didn't hear that, but like maybe Jesse Jackson would, but I don't remember the stuff. Like, I remember that back in the day, like Fuzzy Zeller, the golfer, said something about Tiger Woods, like, we're going to get fried chicken if you win the, something like ridiculous like that. And I was like, oh, that's okay. That's like blatant racism. But I don't remember hearing a lot of that about Obama.
And we may, or I may have just.
Maybe on the down low. Maybe.
Well, no, just like I just feeling the undertones of racism in the country, and how people were just coming after him for being Muslim. Every time they, questioned his American authenticity, they might as well attach the N-word to it.
Okay.
And
that's the way it felt.
Like, it was a very unconscious kind of. Every time you took a swipe at him, it was because
well, he's something different, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. So he must be Muslim. He must not have been born here because look at him.
And he's
different.
And you can't just call him a nigger.
Right. You can't, because that's going to get all the attention. So you do it in a surreptitious way. Yeah. So because we're both educators, like, where do we go from here? So I'm hoping that, people are listening to this who are young people, old people, but are trying to learn. What is the best way to deal with this word in conversation going forward, or in society? Do we make it so even saying a word that sounds like it is grounds for you to not be able to provide for your family? I don't know. I say it like that, like that's ridiculous, but maybe not. I don't know. Where do we put this word? Because if you make it that poisonous, it makes it more powerful. It's like a hydra. Like it just grows and grows and grows. But if you outright say it, you let white people say it and everything, then is that gonna, then everyone's walking around like, at least for a time period before all of that sting wears off, it's going to be a time period where it's like, it gets really nasty. Just because, like in my class, I say to kids, like, don't curse in my class. Don't use the F word or anything like that. And it's not because my virgin ears are going to start spraying blood. These words are great words. They're powerful words. And if you use the F word talking about your chicken's cold or something like that, you just wasted it. Now, when you say it like F you, it's like, whoa, oh my God, they must really mean it. Those words are supposed to have sting. Don't take them out of the vocabulary. Keep them with the sting. But I wonder if the N word has too much sting now. I don't know.
Well, I want to back it up a little bit, going into the, educational aspect of it. I think we kind of forgot just our training when it comes to public want and private want, and how separate those things are, and how people, confuse private language and when it can be used with public language. There is definitely people are like, oh, you need to be real. No, in that sense, you can't be real all the time. And here comes the pushback from that. I'm sure you'll get it. Meaning, you can say something, everything you say in private, you can't say in public. You just can't. I mean, and, we are teachers who are trying to teach that, but there are, oh God, I'm trying to get into all the lessons I would teach on that. It takes years to teach, but there is public wants and private wants. And you have to go with the public discourse for the majority. You might not agree with that majority, but if you're going to live in a democracy, there's some stuff you just have to accept that we can't say. And once the majority feels that is not conducive to push the culture further, then we have to deem it inappropriate. Now, it's a scale, and it'll probably always be changing, but I think we need to kind of adhere to that. Now, what you do privately is exactly that. I may disagree with guns, or all these assault rifles, but I'm probably going to, if my constituents want to support the Second Amendment and they voted for me, I'll probably be voting for the Second Amendment. There are many things that I don't agree with privately, but publicly I kind of just have to go with, because that's just the way it is. And I think people have a misunderstanding when it comes to making that distinction between private and public, and those lines have just been blurred. And the pushback, if you pull it to the public, I think that we just have to understand, like, hopefully there's not going to be red lights pulling you over, okay? But there will be repercussions. There are repercussions to what you say and do, even if it's not illegal. Like toting, well, I have the First Amendment. I can say whatever I want. Yes, you can, and people can say things back to you. In private companies, they can do whatever they want. They can let you go for saying what you. It's not just because we have that protection doesn't mean there are not repercussions. There will be repercussions. You got to weigh those out. And along those lines, I guess I would want to discuss, like, we need to have some leniency, because if someone says words that are offensive,
let's say like whatever's next on the list, okay? Whatever's next of like the thing you're not supposed to say. If you do say it out of ignorance, out of just like, no, I'm not going to say that. I'm tired of these, words police. And I think that the societal pushback needs to be somewhat gentle because you don't want to drive it underground. I'm worried about driving bad ideas underground because I think they're going to fester and boil and grow. Instead, hey, that word should not be said. Let's have a discussion. That's what this podcast is. Let's have a discussion. Let's try and figure out why, blah, 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 blah. And then learn. It's a learning experience as opposed to shame, fire them, blah, 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 blah. Like talking about Kendrick Lamar in the beginning of the podcast of like, this is a teachable moment. Let's let people know, nah, I'm not okay with this. And then, let's not have a mob. Not like, oh, on the way out, jump that chick. Like, no, like, let's just have a conversation. You can't say that. I think he actually said something along the lines of like, no, you can't say that here. It's like, oh, okay. And then instead of everyone booing her and giving her dirty looks or throwing stuff at her, just like, now you know. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's hard because certain things, maybe not with this word, but just certain things along these lines, people get really offended and then they want to, make you pay for saying this. And I think that's as dangerous or more than saying the word. Yeah. Because you don't want people to be like, I'm never going to say that again, but they crush me, but I'm going to just say it to all my friends in my little echo chambers online and blah, 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 blah. And then it grows and grows and grows. And then we get leaders who, might not be the best sometimes.
So looking at the word and power, and I think we can say for a later podcast, we'll talk a little bit about it now, but what is the word, the disease or the symptom of something bigger? And I think with this sensitivity to the word now, just with the rise in hate crimes and anti-Semitism and bullying and gay bashing and everything else, I think everything is kind of heightened already. So
is it heightened or is it more focused in the media? Is it just that there's cameras now of everything? I mean, is it more dangerous to be a black guy getting pulled over by a white cop in 2018 than it was 20 years ago? I don't think so.
Well, no.
Statistically, it wouldn't be. It looks that way.
But statistically, hate crimes have gone up. I mean, enrollment and hate groups have gone up. Well, and not that I'm looking at them, and I'm going from second and third sources.
Yeah, I don't know.
From like CNN and all that other stuff.
Right. So that's another podcast. It's like where we get information from. Maybe we'll do that one later today or something. Sources. Right. Yeah.
But just
it feels that way though. I've had a lot of people tell me that, like, hate crimes are so much more than they were even like 5 years ago. And then I was like, wait a second, like all the Ferguson stuff that was under Obama. Like so. Yeah, I don't know. That's a whole different thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I think it kind of goes back to the word and the power of the word and what is meant when you're saying it and what is appropriate in a public setting and in a private setting. I wouldn't want someone to call. I mean, I can't call screaming down the hall to a teacher, "Hey, what's up, bitch?" Right. No, I can't do that. That's not a.
You can.
I mean, yeah.
There will be societal repercussions.
Yeah. Right. There's, or the C word. That's one word I just don't even like to say. But what up?
I'm more comfortable with that one than I am the N word.
So I'm not. Like it's inappropriate to say that word at work or to be directing that towards a student. I don't want to get so watered down that we're debating on, well, why can't I call you a bitch in class, Mr. Smith? Like, what do you mean, why can't you call me a bitch in class?
Right.
Are you serious right now? That's how I feel sometimes.
That could be a shorter podcast. It's not very kind. It's not like, yeah.
Like, that word means I love you. You're my bitch. Yeah. Like, no, you're not.
Hey, what's up, asshole? Hey, you're my asshole. Hey, I'm fine.
Like, no, there's just with language, words, there's some stuff you're gonna have to be a little more antiseptic, a little, and if it's more manufactured or you can't be real all the time or whatever that is the consequence you pay when you live in an open society.
Yeah.
You can't say whatever you want, whenever you want, and don't think you're going to suffer repercussions for it.
And even if
so there's a trade-off.
Yeah, and even if even if it is just perception, even if like hate crimes aren't, more now, or even if, with Trump in the White House that these things aren't happening, if the perception is that they are, then you should maybe cater your use of language to the perception, because perception is reality.
Yeah.
So even if it feels heightened, then maybe you should be careful of the language you use.
Is it ever appropriate to use?
I don't know. I mean, no, maybe not the N word. I don't know. I mean, I think that, again.
If you're an educator, I mean.
Yeah, so I would say it is appropriate in the context of when you ask me what's the R word. That I would say it's appropriate. If someone asks me, and I believe, like, I gotta take some kind of leeway here and say, like, if I believe that their intentions are sincere of what is the N word, then I would say it. And I think that.
But what if you've been at home having some cocktails, going over your childhood to teenagehood, and you put in the biggie? See, they're like, shouldn't you be able to?
Yeah. So that would go back to like in like a private situation, and I would be, and I have. Listen to Biggie a lot. I do. I love it. Although sometimes I put him in, like while my son's in the car or something, like, oh my gosh, this is so profane. I forgot like how raw he was. Like, oh my God. Like, cause I was a teenager and those words didn't bother me. Not like the N word. I'm talking about just like profanity and sex stuff. It didn't bother me. And then I was in my 20s and 30s and I was just like, whatever. Now I'm like busy watching like Trolls movies and stuff and like, and PG's like is like bad. And then I put in Biggie. I'm like, whoa. Yeah. So I'm like, pause, stop, eject or whatever. And then, but yeah, so I'm conscious. I do look over my shoulder when I'm quoting a Chappelle. I think about it pointed when I'm rapping to Biggie or something like that, or Jay-Z. Like I'm looking around. Is this the context where I can say it? And then I think that's probably the conversation I would have with my boys when they get older enough to rap. But I don't know. Is there anything else that we have to cover for this one? Or?
I'm just looking at what Eminem said about the whole thing. He's used the word. Eminem said... Has
he used the word? Yeah. Not in his songs?
No, he hasn't used them in his songs. He said he has used them...
He was very careful.
Growing up, very careful.
Right.
But when he got old enough, like well into his 20s, he's like, okay, I cannot use this word. And he said... And I think he did speak for all white people when he said that Eminem decided to speak for all white people. He said, we cannot use this word because we don't have that experience. And then he went into the whole, again, he's talking about the group as far as the individual. I don't know what he does on a one-on-one basis, but as a group, I can't say that because he represents the dominant culture for white culture. So it's like, guys, we can't say this. Yeah, and I'm
assuming that he's had a lot of conversations with people about that when he was growing and starting to blow up, like he was probably like, hey, I'm saying this word, is it okay? Or someone says like, hey, or Marshall, like, you can't use this for these reasons. Like, I'm guessing he's a smart dude. So
yeah,
I'm guessing he kind of was just like processed it. Like, people are going to look at me. And if I do these things, X, Y, and Z, if I, eat pepperoni pizza, people are going to want to eat pepperoni pizza. So I got to be careful in what I say and everything like that. And that's what it comes down to is he's around, Black culture and he's having these conversations. He has to be having these conversations at one point or another. He has to be. Okay. Like you have conversations with your friends. Mm-hmm. So, and there's a lot of people, I think, who, especially I can again speak for white people. There's a lot of people in like white communities who don't have a Black friend, who don't have interactions with Black people or Black culture or anything like that. And they are very in the dark of like, what do I do in these situations? And I strongly urge you to make friends, expand your circles, to learn from one another. You can share things about you. They can share things about themselves, not just about race or gender, but everything. Mm-hmm. Have some rich friends, have some poor friends, have some Black friends and white friends and LGBT friends, whatever it is, just because this is what humanity is. This is what society is. And we got to know because we're all different. And those things are not easy because you can't just be like, Craig's looking for a Black friend. Mm-hmm. Just talk to people. We have social media now, and social media is so non-social. We don't use it for social stuff. But you can, it's weird to maybe walk up to someone at the grocery store and be like, you want to be my friend? But it's not nearly as weird to go on to an Instagram or something like that and say, hey, I like, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't think you should fake it, but just sincerely, like, I like your artwork or blah, 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 blah. Start up a conversation. Eventually, you cultivate a friendship. You can do that easier now than ever. And I think that that's something that's lacking, at least a lot of these echo chambers and the polarization, political spectrum, like how both sides are off. And we'll get to that in future podcasts and stuff like that. But
yeah, it's all leading to and coming from, I think, a more systemic concern in the culture that
in American culture,
just American culture, like I said it before, and I guess if we're ending, it kind of ebbs and flows. I've had times in my life where I didn't think we should use the word at all, and then I've had times in my life where I use it as a term of endearment.
Do you use it at this day? You're 2019.
I use it today.
Eric Smith.
Yeah, I use it today. Not in my class, but
like with friends
in private. Depending on the friend.
Yeah,
it's not something that
it's calculated.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's, and I'll probably get backlash for this, but there's only 2 women in this world that I can call bitches. And they get totally what I'm talking about. And they're the only 2 women that I would ever call a bitch. And
you didn't have that conversation. It's just known.
Yeah, like I know I can call her a bitch.
Yeah. Right. I think it's similar to my thing with like Filipinos.
2 women out of all the women that I know.
Right.
Black, white, Jewish, Gentile, like whoever. These are the only 2 women. So I think you have to kind of know your audience. And respect your audience.
Let me guess. You're very close to them.
Yes.
That's the thing. Yeah.
I'm very close to other women too, but I would never,
temperament, it's personality thing too.
She's like, "What up, bitch?" That wouldn't be where they's like, "Oh," that like I'd get a big old hug from it. Yeah. So context, familiarity, how well you know these people, the power of the word, people know, and I think that's a nice place to start. What did he call it? He called it simple prudence. Pretty much know what you're saying, when you're saying, and why you're saying it, and know the context you're doing it. Think about it. Be intellectual. It's not. Yeah. It doesn't hurt to think. It really doesn't.
So don't blindly avoid it, and don't just like ignorantly use it. Like, just be pointed in what you say. I agree with that 100%.
And know why you're saying it. Where is it coming from?
Yeah.
What's the context? As educators.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Eric, for this. We're going to do many different topics in the future, I hope. This was a long one. I don't even know how long we recorded. I didn't have a stopwatch up, but it was long. But I think it's important to put this stuff out there. And I hope that those of you listening got something from, so cylinderradio@gmail.com, pushback, saying that this was good, this was bad, especially if you think it was bad, give me reasons why, give us reasons why. We love constructive criticism.
Or is it too tepid? Did we not hit it hard enough?
Yep.
Should we even stretch it more, or talk about one topic more than the other, or, find some people with totally opposite minds who use the word with everyone. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Learning and growing.
Yep, absolutely.
Looking through the cylinder.
That's the cylinder. Thank you, sir. Yeah. So, again, thank you, Eric, for coming, and we'll have plenty more. And thank you for listening. If you are listening on iTunes, please give us an iTunes rating, preferably a good rating, so that it'll grow and we can get this out to more young people, old people. The point is education. So the more people we can put this in front of, I don't think these kinds of conversations are happening a whole lot in school, and I think they should. So if you're not getting them in school, you're getting them on this podcast. So let's change the way education looks. Let's get away from brick and mortar. Let's get it into the digital world. All right, but thank you very much for listening, and please tune in again. This was Cylinder Radio.